Good evening, everybody. This is the Hillbilly Think Tank with me, Spencer Keck, here in Hardin County, Kentucky. And I'm coming at you live from Tunnel Hills. And I am running for Magistrate in District 3. Now, y'all, I am the educated hillbilly here at the Hillbilly Think Tank. No, that's not an oxymoron. Don't call me a moron. There have been educated, erudite, and emancipated hillbillies in these parts ever since my family came through here with Daniel Boone and Squire Boone. So, y'all, right now in Magistrate District 3 of Hardin County, you know, it is coming close to election time, and real people are making real hard choices. Do you buy the groceries or do you pay the electric bill? Do you take overtime shifts or spend evening with your kids? Tonight, we're not talking about politicians or economics. We're talking about your neighborhood, the people of District 3, about what the economy actually feels like from the ground up. So stay with us.
You like that, little buddy? Is it good? Was it good? Yeah, yeah.
All right, y'all. So we're back. That was my little buddy Casper here out having fun. Now, y'all, we know that here in Hardin County, we are dedicated to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we know we can only do this through government of the people, by the people, and for the people. But a lot of us these days, we're feeling like we just don't have that type of government. So let's talk about what we need to get that kind of government in order to get what we need to run our life to its fullest. Now, y'all, again, like I said, we know the election's coming up, and it is really important that we all get out and vote. So, here in Hardin County, a public school teacher here in the county is what I am. I'm also a combat veteran and a Democrat running for magistrate here in District 3. Now, I taught for 2 years in North Hardin High School. I've since moved on to teach in JCPS. That way I don't feel like I have, any conflicting agendas as I run for office here. So tonight, we're doing something a little different. We're not going to talk about politics in the abstract. We're going to talk about groceries. We're going to talk about rent. We're going to talk about what it actually costs to live and raise a family right here in our district and in our county, and what a local government can actually do about it. Because that's what we're all thinking about, right? What can we do about it? Now, my grandfather fought in World War II. My father fought in Vietnam. I served in combat myself, as did both of my little brothers, one of whom lost his leg and hand in Afghanistan. And 4.5 years later, my dad was living with my brother that lost his leg and hand, and my dad found him hanging in his closet. So, every one of us came home because we believe in something worth coming home to, a community. Now, I came home to Kentucky. My dad had actually gone to take care of my brother in Aberdeen Proving Grounds. That's the Army base my brother was at when he found him like that. But we believe in a country, and we were, brought up to believe that this country would take care of its own, especially after we made the sacrifices that my family has made. And right now, a lot of families in District 3 and in the rest of the county are struggling in ways that no veteran, no teacher, no working parent should have to struggle. So let's get into it. This wonderful county of ours, I want to be a magistrate in this wonderful county, magistrate in District 3. So let's look at what it is that it takes in order to live in this county. So before we dive into numbers, let's take a minute or so for folks who are newer to Hardin County to, and newer to Hardin County government to understand how it works. Because I'll be honest, just about everybody, knows doesn't really necessarily know what a magistrate does. And until I decided to run for this race, I hadn't a clue, especially what judge executives did. But of course, a judge executive really can't do anything unless he works with the magistrates. So the magistrates make up the fiscal court. And the fiscal court is made up of the county judge exec and 8 magistrates, one from each of our 8 districts. We're the legislative body of the county government. So we vote on the budget, we vote on ordinances, we vote on how tax dollars get spent and where. Of course, that's what we all are interested in, right? Now, District 3 covers a very significant area. It goes all the way from, of course, I'm right in the middle of it here in Tunnel Hills neighborhood, which is, of course, right in between Shepherdsville Road, Tunnel Hill Road, and then that goes all the way back to 62. And the district also stretches out to Colesburg. So, that's that small, close-knit community, really good residential community located near Muldry Hill and I-65. You can actually see it from I-65 or briefly. It is known as a family-friendly area with a high rate of home ownership, a population of about 1,319. So it features also right near there, we've got Youngers Creek, which has a large residential acreage is what it's known for. So you can have, 6 to 29 acre lots out there, Youngers Creek, and they're often listed for sale with opportunities for custom builds. I like to go out in that area, not far from Youngers Creek, to go hiking with the dogs, one of our wonderful state parks. I got my 4 pups, and they just love to scamper in those hills and hollers. So we've, in this geography, coming back from Colesburg, Youngers Creek, making your way back this way, Tunnel Hills, go through Battle Training, and then turning on Shepherdsville Road, which of course, come on down, we're going to turn into Miles and take from there Miles and go towards Mulberry, head on out to Eastern Parkway. When you get to Eastern Parkway, that's this side of it is District 3. We're also going on down into Elizabethtown, and from throughout Mulberry and on one side of Miles is District 3, all the way down to the old courthouse at the square. Got a little pie-shaped portion of the old square there that's in District 3. All right, so now we're all familiar with what we're talking about. So, we got a lot of farming areas here. Then we've got actual urban, living. And I won't call this necessarily small town living, because I've got family that live in places like Colesburg. That's real small town living. But, in your downtown Elizabethtown area, you've got houses that have nice sized yards, but you've also got your neighbors, fairly close to you when you compare it to like Youngers Creek. Here where I live, of course, I've got neighbors to my left, my right, and my front, but right behind me is a whole bunch of cattle and farm that's been there for a long time. It's really beautiful. So anyway, this district stretches from all the way from basically Fort Knox back down to Elizabethtown. And there are teachers, veterans, factory workers, farmers, and small business owners in this district. This is really key to how we understand ourselves. Now, we all in this area deserve a magistrate who shows up, and I will do that. I'm doing that now. And that's why I'm running. You know, it's not because I want a title. I've had quite a few titles in my life. I was a career sailor. I was a hospital corpsman. Before that, I was a deck seaman. But most of my career was spent as a hospital corpsman. So I did the work of a doctor, a nurse, a counselor, a immunization specialist, the health department. When I was on a ship, I did all those jobs. When I was with the Marines, still did all those jobs because as a Navy hospital corpsman, in the Marine Corps being the infantry of the Navy, I served with both Marines and with Navy units. So, so I had, plenty of titles there. I don't need another title. My title right now of public school teacher really suits me a lot too. I love it. Still giving back to the community. But because I spent a whole career in service, in uniform, and now in the classroom, and I believe that public service means something, that's why I'm running. I want to serve this community. So let's take another look at some of the wonderful places in this beautiful community that I like to trot the dogs around.
I'll prove myself in cold cases. Maybe things can go back to the way they were.
All right. So we're trying to get our organic.
See?
When I taught in Hardin County, I saw every day this interface between kids that live on Fort Knox or had lived there, and their parents are stationed there, farm kids, Radcliffe kids, Cecilia kids. So, I know the county, not just this district, but I know that we all want our kids to be able to go on the school bus safely on the roads. You know, um, we want them to be able to get home safe without the bus blowing out a tire because, hey, the county doesn't take care of potholes in some areas, depending on where you live. That's not good. I don't want my kids getting run over because there are no sidewalks in my community, even though we have a lot of houses here. So we need to have a real knowledge of what it would take to fix these problems that we all see and we know we need fixing. So, you know, I used to see it when parents would come to school events, they'd be stressed. And I'd see it when students would come in late because their parents had to work two jobs. And they might even miss a day of school. So, according to recent data, the average American household is spending significantly more on basic necessities than they were just 3 years ago. I know we all feel it. Grocery prices have increased by somewhere between 20 and 25% since 2020. Utilities are up, way up. Gas is volatile, and healthcare costs so much, and the costs are just climbing. Now, here in Kentucky, the picture is real. The median household income in Hardin County sits around, we've looked at it, about 40,000, 50,000, depending on where you are, or lower in many places. So, we can have and afford a modest lifestyle. Some of us, but many of us, that's, when talking median, there's quite a few folks who aren't making that much. So we need to be able to afford this housing, food, transportation, healthcare, childcare. And, these costs often run way above this median income made in this county. So what can we do about it? Child care alone can cost a family $800 to $1,200 a month in this region. That's nearly a car payment on top of a car payment every single month just to go to work. We all got to have a car just about to go to work. What does that mean in real terms? It means families are making impossible choices. Do we fix the car or pay the electric bill? Do we take the kids to the doctor or do we cover the rent this month? And as I'm out and about talking to people, introducing myself, introducing my campaign, I've had folks tell me, you know what? I don't even have a car. I can't afford one. And I'm talking to them, where they work. They're telling me we really need that public transportation that has been promised to us by the fiscal court for years, but we don't have it. The bus you see around, running people around, is privately owned, and it charges people by the mile. Basically, it's a glorified taxi. And that is quite pricey for folks on a very fixed income, especially if they're only making $7.25 an hour or less. A lot of these folks I talk to who are working as waitresses are like, hey, I'm $3.25 an hour as a waitress plus tips. I'm not making it. And transportation isn't something. One lady told me she couldn't consider buying a car. So she really wants that public transportation that, again, the fiscal court has been promising, but we haven't gotten. So let's let that sink in a bit. Now, these are not problems of lazy people. Hardin Countyans are not lazy. These are the problems of hardworking Americans who've been left behind by an economy that rewards the wealthy and squeezes everyone else. Can you feel it? I know I feel it. So, employment in this district, there's a lot of folks who really were counting on the EV plant, worked there 3 months all over this county, and they felt the crunch when it got shut down. And we know that Governor Beshear has just announced that Ford is going to put in quite a few pennies, quite a few $1 million to bring in the plant back to a new use now. They're promising to start off with 2,100 employees and to make their way up to 5,000. Now, I'm excited about that because I want to see the young folks here be able to stay in this county and make a good living wage. But let's see what they really do, right? We need that to really happen and to work because the cost of living is only half the story. The other half is what people are actually bringing home. Fort Knox and the defense sector, they're major employers here in Hardin County. And that's a stabilizing force for this county. But of course, not everyone works on the post. And even for those connected to the military economy, wages don't always keep pace with cost. Just remember what happened during the shutdown. That hurt not just the folks that worked there on the base, but also it affected the folks who out here in town with the small businesses that rely on folks coming off of that base to spend their hard-earned money. And we know that. We remember that. Now, Kentucky's minimum wage is still a paltry $7.25 an hour. That's the federal minimum. It hasn't been changed in 15 years. And everything else has gone up dramatically in those 15 years. Now, as I said, I'm a teacher, and I know firsthand that public servants are underpaid in this state. Kentucky teachers on average earn less than the national median, and many of my colleagues are working second jobs just to stay afloat. That's not right. That's not how we attract and keep good educators for our kids. Now, I'm fortunate. I did retire from the military. So, you know, that my retirement is still a pittance, but it's a good pittance. It helps out. I can pay my mortgage with my retirement pay. That means a lot. But our kids deserve teachers that see themselves as the professionals that they are. Almost every teacher that I work with has a master's degree. Some have PhDs. If you really want your kid to be taught by a professional, they should have that master's degree. The countries in the world that have the best teachers, such as Finland, South Korea, Japan, their teachers are treated with the same respect as doctors and lawyers, and quite a bit more respect than politicians. And they actually pay their teachers in the same manner that lawyers and doctors are paid. They're held in high esteem, and they're paid in commensurate to what they do, which is deliver a quality product of educated young folks that are ready when they leave their schools to go straight into either the workforce or higher education. Now, y'all, it's really, really a travesty in this nation that the folks that spend the most time with your kids and are in charge of making sure that your kids get to become doctors or lawyers, it's really a travesty that we don't pay them commensurate to the expectations we have for teachers. So, we really should think about that. That's the largest employers in rural America. And here we are in mostly rural Hardin County. Of course, we know Radcliffe and Elizabethtown are sizable, but we're still rural. The largest employers in rural America are school districts and healthcare. So why don't we give them that appreciation? Because that's the biggest employers here. We want our kids to stay here, work here, play here. So the same is true for other essential workers, emergency responders, county employees, healthcare workers in our community hospital, and our community clinics. These are the people who kept this country running through the pandemic, and they deserve wages that reflect that. They put themselves in harm's way. Now, I want to be honest with you. A county magistrate doesn't set the minimum wage. That happens at the state and federal level. But local government can advocate for that. Local government can prioritize living wages in county contracts. Local government can create conditions that attract those employers who pay fairly. And we can make sure Ford does that when they come back. And a magistrate who shows us that they're going to show up, they're going to be here, and they're going to make a difference. This is what we need. And this is what I promise I will be. I will speak up for all of us. I will make a difference because that's what I believe with everything I have and every fiber of my body. Absolutely to the core. That's my passion, service and showing up. I did it for 2 wars and everything in between in my service from 1990 to 2014. And so did my brothers, so did my dad. So, in this beautiful state we've got so many opportunities in a beautiful place to enjoy beautiful scenery. Now, y'all, We've got some beautiful scenery here. We've got some wonderful folks here, some of the best I've ever known. But we've also got folks who are feeling the housing and rent pressure and feeling it for real. You know, we had that promise that Blue Oval SK, the EV plant, was going to deliver a long future of great employment for our kids and for ourselves. And the county exploded in growth and population and excitement to come to this wonderful place. Well, now that we're waiting for that that promise to come back online again, you know, the housing prices went up dramatically. You know, my house that I live in now, I bought in 2022. It's worth about 60,000 more than when I bought it. That's a quick, fast jump. And, you know, now that folks don't have the jobs that were there that they were promised, we've got to keep pace. We've got to think out of the box to do so. So, what are we going to do? Again, let's talk about that roof over your head. Because here in District 3 and across Hardin County, housing has become a real pressure point. That pressure point came as rent went up significantly in Elizabethtown and all the surrounding area over the past several years. 2-bedroom apartments that rented for $600 or $700 a few years ago are now listing for $900 to $1,000, sometimes even more. And that's if you can find something available. The inventory of affordable housing in our region is tight, very tight. And while some new development has come in, a lot of it has been aimed at the higher end of the market. You know, not at working families, not at teachers or veterans with fixed incomes, and not the folks who built this community. You know, we were expecting to pay premium prices for houses because we thought that the executives that were going to come to Blue Oval SK and all the tertiary businesses built up to support Blue Oval SK was going to bring in high paying execs. You know, well, where are we now? We got to remember who built this community. It's us. You know, for homeowners, property taxes haven't skyrocketed the way they have in some urban areas. And that's something to be grateful for in Kentucky. But maintenance costs, insurance costs, and utility costs have climbed. And for seniors that are living on fixed incomes and homes that they've owned for decades, even a modest increase can feel crushing. And that's what I keep hearing over and over. Now, I think about a family like one I know. I won't use their names, but they're in the district. Dad is a veteran. Mom works at a local business. They've got 2 kids in our public schools in this district. They've done everything right, and they're still barely making it month to month because rent went up and their wages didn't. That's who I'm running for. That's who I am passionate about. So, you know, let's think about some real stories. Let's think about the voices, like I said, that I heard over the past several weeks. I've been talking to people at community events, at the hardware store, at church, on my hikes, you know, around our great parks, you know, right here in District 3. I love going over to Buffalo Lake. Get to meet some great folks on those hikes. You know, my dogs love it. Other people's dogs love it. Bikers love it. But, you know, every once in a while, someone will see my dogs. We'll start talking. Yeah, we know that the biggest financial pressure families are facing is just those we've just talked about. And they say, hey, they've got to have a break. So what are some of the financial pressures that your family is facing right now? My line is open if you want to give me a call. 606-253-9885. That's not my campaign phone number, but that is one I use for the show here. Give me a call. Let me know, what is it that you see is a financial pressure your family is facing right now. Let me know if what I've been hearing from folks, you know, is, needing amplification. Because I'd say, talk to folks who said, hey, also, we need more affordable housing out in the county, not just in our metropolitan areas of Radcliffe and Elizabethtown. So, what's your thought? How are you feeling this crunch when it comes to, can you afford to fill up 2 cars if you got a 2-income household and you both are working? I know it's tough. I've got an electric car. I was hoping that a lot of us could start affording them here in Kentucky if that EV plant had stayed in line and in production. But what do you think? Say, give me a call, 606-253-9885. If you want to give a shout out to me, I'll put my number up here in the chat. And yeah, give me a call. Let me know if there's some pressures that we're missing and that I need to really look at, because I'm hearing a lot of them. And again, affordability and costs are some of the biggest. The fact that we love this place and we want to see our kids be able to stay here because they love it here, but they don't know if they'll be able to get a job that will be able to keep up with the higher cost of living now. Hey, before I go on, and while I'm waiting to see if anybody wants to call, let's go see who we got on here tonight. Any notes that we've got? All right, we've got Becky. Hey, Becky and Randy. Thanks, guys. Hi, Randy. Yeah, Becky recognized I was show a little scene there of Bernheim, close by with the dogs. Oh man, have I still lost volume? We back? Let's see. Can you guys hear me? Hopefully the volume's back. Hopefully I haven't been talking to nothing. All right. We are closer to foreclosure than we are mansions. Yeah. Randy says, yep. All right. Yes, teachers are completely under-respected, underpaid, and overworked for little wages. Becky says, yes, we do. All right. Randy says, the last 3 General Assemblies in Frankfort have been the worst on teachers in Kentucky. Yeah, got to agree. We know that our governor and our lieutenant governor have tried to do more for teachers, but they cannot get the General Assembly to go along with that. All right. Becky says, many workers gave up careers, bought homes, moved states just to be completely let down. We're talking about that Blue Oval SK. The people of Glendale have to look at a promise that fell through every time they drive by. And isn't that a monstrosity to drive by and see an enormous empty promise with those empty buildings? I say empty, I mean empty of workers. And absolutely, Randy, Becky is speaking the truth. Becky says the new developments are unaffordable. They're beautiful, but who can afford them without multiple incomes in the home? And yeah, Becky, that's exactly my sentiment. They built just about, I think, 3 blocks away from me here, right across from the community I live in, across Shepherdsville Road. They got a beautiful, beautiful new luxury apartment complex that they built. I'm wondering how many people are really able to afford their rent there. All right, Becky says, we appreciate seeing you out. For those watching, Becky says, Spencer really is out in the community, probably more than he says he is. LOL. Thanks, Becky. And Becky says, we need roads, infrastructure, affordable housing, and accessible medical care in rural areas. Yes, we do. And we need to build them with union labor. Absolutely. A rising tide lifts all boats. and that's it. You know, I've been a member of 2 unions. First, I was a member of AFGE when I worked for the VA. And then now that I am a teacher, I'm a part of the Kentucky Education Association, KEA. Uh, and it's, of course, I was a member of its subsidiary here in Hardin County when I taught here. And now that I teach in JCPS, I'm a member of JCTA. I know that unions are there for all of us. Like I said, they lift all boats. And the tide comes up when unions are there and able to do their thing. All right, we got Coffee Cats here again tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. And Coffee Cat says, hey, everyone, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Yes, thank you so much for reminding everyone of that. Coffee Cats. And we've got Randy saying, the big, beautiful bill cut the funding for green jobs like Blue Oval and was a cause of the demise of that plant. And yes, it was. It is a complete travesty to me. I mean, gosh, the funk that I felt when I heard this travesty at Blue Oval SK, because only a week before here on this show, I had made a promise that if I am elected in November for magistrate here in District 3, first thing I was going to do was buy a Ford Lightning. Now here we go. That thing's out of production. Just a travesty. Absolute travesty, because Kentucky was going to make its battery. So, all right. Well, like I said, y'all, for the past several weeks, actually several months, I've been talking to people at all these community events, the VFW, the American Legion, and along with the other places I mentioned earlier. Again, that simple question I'm asking, what's the biggest financial pressure your family is facing right now? Again, my number's up there if you want to call and let me know what you feel it is. But I've been listening to folks, and say, hey, I also heard an adult say, hey, we really need county help when we're adults. We want a class to do things as adults, like some dance lessons, maybe. We need to know if we're out in the county, where can we get the GED lessons if that's what we need? So, I told her, hey, ECTC is one of the places to start, but, we do need, as the lady said, it's great that the young kids have activities in the towns, but in the county, there's really nothing for folks that are adults and have been for a while, and their income is fixed, but they really feel that they need a break, and they would like to have a break of just some adult entertainment education, learning how to do some dancing or learning how to do maybe some quilting, these things. And this is something that, I'm listening. That actually struck a chord with me. So, all right. Again, if anyone wants to call in, feel free. Got the phone number up there that we can dial in. And all right. Now, another thing is someone said, hey, groceries. I used to spend just $150 per week, but that's not what I'm spending now. She said, yeah, she felt during the bird flu that the egg costs were high, but that wasn't anything compared to everything being high now. And she understood during the bird flu epidemic that why eggs were expensive. That didn't bother her as much. But when she goes to drive to the grocery store now, and she's at the far reaches of the county and driving all the way in to a store and all the way back to her house, nearly empties her gas tank, she's feeling the crunch. And the costs are just something that we really are all feeling is driving us little bit bonkers, right? And what can we do about it? Well, we've already heard one of the big things. Like Randy's saying, we have got to get to where we are back to union labor. Have to have union labor to help us get the wages that we deserve. If the state assembly is not going to raise our hourly wage, well, if we have, the unions doing what they do best and advocating for us, then we won't be paid $7.25 an hour. But of course, we know that right now we've gone to become a right to work state, even though we lost folks in this state to fight for the right to unionize years ago. Now, they're union labor. I know Randy, I know Becky. They work union labor, one of our UAW run plants here in the county, and I'm really proud of them. I know that we have AFGE folks, that's the federal government's employee union, and they have a very good union on Fort Knox. But we need more. We need for our teachers union here in this county to be as strong as the teachers union is where I work in Louisville. Because JCTA, when they go sit down and negotiate, they negotiate real good. We get a lot, almost everything, I should say, that we want. I'm paid a lot better than I was paid here in this wonderful county. But again, it's where are our priorities in this county? So what is it that we can do in this county and in our local government to create conditions that will create prime opportunities for the UAW to get even stronger, for AFGE to stay strong on Fort Knox? And that's what we're here to talk about. If Randy has any ideas, I'll wait for him to tell us. But, Randy, I see him putting another number out here. Randy says that Ford got roughly $9.2 billion in federal tax dollars to create the Glendale plant and the one in Tennessee. Basically, Ford got a free plant in Glendale and we paid for it. Hey guys, we got Becky on the line here. Becky, how is it going?
Hey, how are you?
All right.
So, I thought it would probably be easier to chime in for this.
Yeah, well, actually, I wonder if we can do, it looks like we might have Randy coming in. Let's see if we can do a joint call. Oh, he hung up. Yeah.
Oh,
So, what do you think?
so you were talking about the different unions and getting them involved. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, got you. So we were talking about the different unions and getting them involved. I just wanted to talk about, I've actually.
Hold on just a second. Hold on just a second there, Becky, let's see if we can get Randy. There he is. All right.
Lobby for bills to help get them passed. We've been, today, I just came back from May Day today.
Oh my gosh. I was so concerned with the Oaks. I forgot the most important reason for this day, May Day. Oh, man, where'd you go?
It was a fantastic turnout. We were up in Louisville. The AFL-CIO was there. We had UAW. We had Teamsters, CWA. I know I'm going to forget a whole bunch of names, so my apologies to the ones I forget. But oh, hey, Randy. But yeah, it was a really good event. A lot of communication, a lot of solidarity. a lot of just networking with people. You had everything from people that were already in office that were out there face painting and mingling and talking to people, to people that were running for election out there, getting to know the people that they're going to hopefully serve.
Man, that is awesome. Was it just a 1 day deal since May 1st is only 1 day, or is there any?
Yeah, and this was actually the first time that there was an event like this. So
Wow.
the good thing about that is moving forward, our plans are to grow that and expand that and make it as big as we can. Because
Absolutely.
that's the only way that we're going to beat this, is with all the workers coming together, because there's more of us than there are them.
Absolutely.
What we have is 2028, where union contracts get on the same day as possible throughout all the unions.
Oh, heck yeah.
We have the bargaining and we need to live.
Yes. Yeah. Not, and we need that countywide. We also need it Kentucky-wide and nationwide. But
Absolutely.
As I've told you guys before, my dad was a member of the pipe fitters local out of Ashland, Kentucky, and I just grew up understanding the importance of unions, and I've joined one once I got out of the military. Now two, as I was saying earlier, my second one, and I just know how extremely important they are. That, or even co-ops, or companies where the employees own the majority share. That's a big deal too. We have that at one of the grocery stores here in Elizabethtown, right? Isn't it? Is it called Foodland? I'm trying to think the name of the one over there, not too far from Dixie. Do you know, Becky?
I don't know.
Well, it is worker owned, employee owned. I know that. So I try to. Yep. Yep. Yep.
On the Blue Oval situation, I do want to say that Harley Ford is the one who caused the problem in the first place by firing. Ford was still a part of that, even though it was Ford and Blue Oval are SK together. It's still fighting for them to get recall rights.
And that's what I hope happens. Yeah, I was wondering. I was glad you guys. And that's an absolute travesty for the county. Not just the state, but this county especially. Yep.
All of it.
Yep. Well, also I was out on, let's see, Sunday, I believe it was. No, Monday. I took the day off Monday. And I've talked to you guys about this place before, but I always got to give it a shout out because it's one of the ones that just treats their people good, and that's Maker's Mark. I went out there talking to those folks, making $30 an hour, $34 an hour as waitresses and bartenders. And then not to even mention, go on up to people that do even, higher level things there. But there's folks working in Indiana. Living in Indiana, driving all the way out to little old Loretto to work at those hourly wages. We talked to a 21-year-old waitress. What's that? Because the UAW union, yeah. Yep. Well, that's the thing, Maker's Mark now is owned by Suntory Beam, and yet the Samuels family still insists that they keep the full benefits for their employees, pay them that well, give them their maternity leave. My waitress's last time was 21 years old. She said she started working there 6 months after her son was born. She's a single mom. She owns her own house in Campbellsville. She drives from Campbellsville, Loretto, and has her car paid off. So we can do that. We've talked about it before
So
with union wages, and we could do it.
that the integrity of some corporations were, and when you're talking
But
about
it's
this,
not. I know. That's why I
Right.
continuously give them a shout out, because it's a Kentucky example of, man, these people are
But you also-
millionaires, but they're still doing it right.
you also recognize that all unions put those wages for the plant, keep those wages like that's all part of the situation.
Oh yeah.
I'm glad to make it work that employees well. The problem is the exception instead of the rule.
Exactly. Oh no, but that's what we've talked about. It's absolutely exception, not the rule, but that exception shows you it's absolutely possible. And actually, I've had the pleasure of twice talking to Bill when I've gone out there for a tour and gone to eat. He just happened to be out there again Sunday, and we talked about that. I talked about how these tariffs have been killing the industry, and it breaks my heart because I know that they're doing everything they can for their employees to keep that life up. Yeah.
That's right. Well, shortages in this week, steel shortage. It's ridiculous. And
Man.
it's all because of this tariff war and all of these things happening. Too many inconsistencies and long-term decisions based on short-term unreliability.
Yep.
And that whole unreliability, it affects all across our entire nation. You have gas prices are so high, and we've seen this historically. When prices get high, people stop buying high dollar things like vehicles,
Like I'm saying,
computers.
yeah. Well, that's what this,
things.
one of the folks, was telling me, is like, hey, I drive so far to get to the store, and by the time I pay those gas prices, I can't buy everything I want to. She's like, I used to pay $150 a week for groceries. Now it's 220 easy, often 300, 350, because the family's a little bit sizable. And she said her husband's pay hasn't gone up a single cent, and these 3 years of increasing costs. Well, actually, year and a half, she was saying, was been the worst. This last year and a half. And I keep talking to farmers who are saying they can't put the diesel in their tractors. They can't afford to buy the fertilizer they need to put in their fields, during this planting season. So they're gonna have to plant possibly without fertilizer.
Well, you're talking about farmers. There's also the hurt that they're experiencing because a lot of their work that they bring in are immigrant workers that are being targeted.
Oh yeah.
So farmers, especially in Kentucky, has a lot of farmers, are being affected in so many different ways that it makes it hard for them to even stay afloat.
Well, just imagine, we've got, like you talk about the immigrant workers, they're being targeted, and that really is something that we don't really realize here in Hardin County. It's behind the scenes, they're doing a lot,
Yeah,
and out not only behind the scenes, but like, and we've got a student in JCPS was about to graduate high school, and they nabbed this student, and the student's now in LaGrange in the detention center right before, and this kid's been here, was part of the DACA, but now in detention in LaGrange.
Yeah.
So it's, people are in fear. What's that? Yeah. But how often have you seen that on the local news? I haven't seen it.
No,
just because I
because
teach
you
it,
got
you know.
corporations that
Yep.
own this, and the CBS owns
Yep. Well, you know, and I served 22 years in active duty, and I thought I'd be okay in retirement between, you know, the prescriptions for my family, the electrical bill, and everything seemed to be going backwards every month. You know, I never expected this, you know, what we're going through now. I thought I was going to be
Right.
able to be enjoying this part of my life in my, you know, 50s, traveling the world, you know, having fun.
Well,
Um,
you made, sorry to cut you off. You
yeah,
made a point earlier. You were talking about how well they pay their workers at, 30 something dollars an hour.
and 34 and more.
30,
Yeah.
yeah, but that doesn't get you anywhere. Even though people look at it and say, oh, well, back, in the 50s, minimum wage was XYZ. $34 an hour when gas is $4.19. Diesel's even higher than that. And that directly affects the cost of our goods. It directly affects everything that we pay for. That $34 doesn't go as far as it used to.
No, that's what, you know, I was talking to another person who said, hey, I love my job. I love my kids, but I'm driving for DoorDash on weekends just to make ends meet. And something's got to be wrong with this picture. You know, is what they were telling me.
And
I'm like, yeah, you're right. Something is wrong with that picture.
yeah, it used to be the American dream, but what is that anymore?
Well, it's becoming a beautiful nightmare.
Yeah.
minimally and be able to live more, especially like you said, 15 years since we've had an increase. It's always one of the last ones to do anything about helping people in that regard.
Well, and pretending otherwise, you know, isn't helping anybody, because these are real people that we're all talking about. It's people that live here in this district in our county, and we just need leadership that's going to try to do something about it. You know, and that's why I'm trying to get elected, because like, hey, I know I can't change the minimum wage, like I was saying earlier, but I can be a proponent for the UAW, for AFGE, for folks who want to, you know, have employee-owned businesses and need a way to be able to do it, incentives to do it. You know.
It's only short right now. Our money has two problems. Number one, we have inflation, and most of where it's called stagnation. Continuously where prices printing more money and worth less, which makes it worth less.
Well, and those tariffs don't help. You know, the tariffs drove the desirability of the American money down the drain. You know, people are like, you know what, we'll use the euro. Yep, yep. Well, you know, the next thing I guess I got to ask you is, what can it, you know, what is possible for our local government to really do? That's so what I think, you know, magistrate, if I actually get elected, what I can actually do, you know, is be that politician that doesn't make big promises that I can't deliver on, but I can be straight with folks. You know?
So I actually have a very easy answer for you. It's an easy answer that will be complex to pull off. But the simplest answer to that is do what you can to support unions in the area, because statistically it is proven that when there is unionization in the area, people make better profits, they have better health care, better protections on the job, and it benefits the community in ways that you can't really palpitate all the time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's, you know, that's my deal, is I'm a union member myself, union supporter. I'm a veteran supporter.
Yeah.
You know, and I want,
And we know that, and we appreciate that.
well, I want
You
to
know,
see more of these, you know, groups come together. You know, we need to have, like we've talked about before, a meeting of AFGE, UAW, and whatever union the coffee shops, you know, come up with in the area. Yeah. Yep. Yep. So I think next time we talk offline, we need to make a real plan for it. You know.
yeah. And that, like I said, those conversations have started happening. There is a grocery store in Louisville. It's called Rainbow Blossom, and they were organizing. They didn't have very many workers. They are coming under the United Food and Commercial, or help me, Randy, USPW.
Commercial, yes. Commercial workers. And they've been waiting 3 years. They won their election contract. Keep going.
Yes. So we got involved. Different unions, SEIU would go show up. Of course, UAW, we would show up. We would go every single week and stand outside that grocery store to let the company know, like, look, they're union workers just like us, and we all stand together. That's what we have to do. We have to start unionizing people in every way that we can possibly bring them together. So we understand we are closer together than we are farther apart.
And we need magistrates that won't work against labor, but will work with labor. Won't
Absolutely.
push. And that's the big push for me. Because I like I say, I've seen what unions have done for me when I was in AFGE. And I was doing my darn best to make sure that the veterans that I was advocating for got everything they needed. But when some folks didn't like that in the VA because they were going to have to work harder, and tried to get me fired. Well, it was the AFGE that helped me to advocate, for my position and, my work with the head of the Montana VA, which is where I was working at the time. And we won the case, and they told basically these rabble rousers to shut down and leave me alone and let me help veterans, So I want to see more of that. I know we've got AFGE at the VA on Fort Knox. We're supposed to have a VA clinic being built just off of Ring Road, which would still, I think, probably be in my district. Doesn't matter. It's still going to be here in Hardin County. And so, that's going to be another AFGE union in the county. We've got AFGE at the VA on Fort Knox. Of course, Fort Knox has AFGE and HRC and other places, that DOD employees work. So we've got to get together. I invited one of them that I met not too long ago to, come on here tonight, but I'm not sure if, if you got the message or not, but I really would like to see us all get together and really make a difference, because Hardin County, they deserve it, and we definitely deserve that Ford do the right thing by employees this time around.
From working against it for the good of business over the good of workers' rights and workers' wages. Because when we were set to Frankfurt, that basically controls one side of the aisle.
Yeah, I hear you. Yep. Well, y'all, I really appreciate you calling in, and
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, and
listen, we appreciate what you do. Seriously.
Yeah, well,
Every day.
hopefully I can do more and more. That's my goal, and hopefully together, that you, me, the magistrates, hopefully we can, make this a undivided county. Because we know that our motto here is in Kentucky's United we stand, divided we fall. But it seems like we've been a bit too divided. It's been that left versus right, Republican versus Democrat. We need to realize now it's those billionaires that control the purse strings against us. We all need to come together and be our brother's keeper, our sister's keeper. Yeah, absolutely. Uh-oh, Copycat said she couldn't hear me. I hope that wasn't, darn it. I don't know if that's you guys on the phone or if that's me talking to you guys.
So while I had you on here earlier, when I couldn't hear you, it was like for a couple minutes at a time, and then it popped back on. So I don't know if that's still the case because I can't hear it right now, but I'll let you know.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate it. Again, y'all.
All right.
Listen,
thank you so much.
Y'all have a great night.
You too.
Bye. And so everyone, hopefully you could hear our conversation there. Hopefully it wasn't just seeming like it was a one-sided deal. because we've got a lot going on. And, right now, we know that we're all under stress. This war is not something we expected to be affecting our economy and for us to be pulled into again. And before I sign off here, I just want to remind us all that they're right now on those ships that are there running the blockade on the Strait of Hormuz, the sailors are not eating properly. Um, and I just, this is something that you might not have heard. I'm sure you actually haven't heard because I haven't heard it on the state run media, but I have seen it on other reliable news sources. Um, Sailors reporting from the ships, and it's not just sailors on the ships, it's sailors and Marines, because this is an amphibious readiness group, meaning Marine transport ships plus an aircraft carrier out there waging this war. And also, they're the ones that are, doing the blockade for the Strait of Hormuz. And yet they are not being fed properly. So, just it's not just me saying it. Like I said, I've got this from other reliable sources, and here's one of them.
Before they did it. These are some of the photos that USA Today got from military families. This is what sailors and Marines are eating right now, and they're rationing this. Trump and Hegseth started this war now a couple months ago, and in all that time, they didn't think that, oh, maybe we need to feed our troops. Military families have been desperately trying to send care packages to their sailors and Marines who are trapped on these ships near the Strait of Hormuz. But all of those packages and all of that food is stuck in limbo. Again, because Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth didn't think about the logistical needs of a military at war. Folks, let me tell you, as someone who's been to war, when you get a clear sign that your chain of command, the people in charge of you, don't care about your safety and well-being, there is nothing more demoralizing than that. And when you've got thousands, maybe tens of thousands of sailors and Marines basically starving for weeks, while Trump and Hegseth get in front of cameras and talk about how they could do this war forever, being armchair generals and pretending like they're so tough, there's not a lot that's more demoralizing than that. The way that Trump and Hegseth are prosecuting this war is going to be disastrous for American national security for probably a generation. When sailors and Marines get trapped at sea for months longer than the deployment they were initially told that they were going on, and now they're left to basically starve and share scraps of whatever this is, do you really think they're going to re-enlist? When young people at home who may be thinking about the military are seeing stories about sailors and Marines going on extra long deployments and getting stuck on ships to starve, do you think they're going to leave high school and think about joining the military? The only reason that these sailors and Marines are starving right now is because feeding them is not a priority. We have already seen what the United States military is capable of. When that pilot was downed in Iran, the US military moved heaven and earth to find them. And I'm glad that that happened. That should happen.
Of course, I'm telling you, we haven't even seen that pilot on the news. So that was a cover story.
Now, it's my personal opinion. I think that feeding thousands of sailors and Marines is at least as important as finding one downed pilot. The Trump administration is not feeding.
Feeding sailors and Marines is as important as the propaganda cover story we were fed about a mystical, non-existent down pilot.
Sailors and Marines because they do not care about them. And they are hoping that the American people don't care about them, because rescuing a downed pilot from behind enemy lines, that's a really sexy story. Whereas feeding sailors and Marines, it's not going to get the headlines, I guess. So why do it? American sailors and Marines are apparently starving on U.S. Navy.
So this is an actual factual truth. And the fact that we are allowing all of these sailors and Marines to starve while at sea is a travesty. I've been out on one ship in my career from 1990 to 2014. Only one ship where we had to kind of scrape the barrel for a few days. until we could hit a port because the supply officer made some really bad logistical decisions and didn't quite plan properly, and we didn't hit a port when we thought we would. So it wasn't totally the SUPO, that's what we call it, the supply officer in the Navy. It wasn't totally his fault, but we didn't go as long as the sailors are on these ships in the Strait of Hormuz. And as I reported earlier, when they evacuated the folks from Bahrain and Kuwait and other places, all these bases in the Middle East, evacuated them on a moment's notice, saying, hey, grab your pets, and active duty and military families, we're evacuating you now. They didn't have time to grab their toiletries, their toothbrushes, their soap, and they were sent over to places like Norfolk Naval Base with nothing and having to beg for help from the USO, the VFW, the American Legion. So this is piss poor planning. And piss poor planning on this administration's part should not be an emergency for us. But it is if your family is in the military, serving overseas, and waiting for your family members to be able to eat a proper fucking meal while they're in fucking combat. God damn. So, yeah. Again, like Randy says here, another failure of the current administration in Washington, D.C. It's shameful. And one last note of shame that I've got to bring up because, the state media is not bringing this one up either, but the U.S. House voted to extend domestic surveillance on U.S. citizens. So the FISA has been voted on and approved by the House. Maybe the Senate will reject it, but if they didn't get enough folks in the House to reject it with a Guardians of the Pedophile Party majority, do I think in the Senate, where the Guardians of the Pedophile have a majority, that they're going to turn over and vote against what the House says? Boy, I don't know. I can only think of one, maybe two senators that won't just look at any chance they can get to, tickle that mushroom of Captain Bone Spurs. So I don't expect this to be something that we're going to get pushback on from the U.S. Senate. I hope we do. I hope there's some people in the Senate who are not just so fully dedicated to continuous support from the cult that they will allow domestic surveillance of U.S. citizens to continue unabated and unfettered. We'll talk more about this later because, tonight was more about local politics. But again, domestic surveillance will affect everyone, everywhere in the United States, including Hardin County. Maybe especially Hardin County, since we have a very important military base, Fort Knox, in our county. That gold bullion reserve is very important strategically and economically. And our HRC for the Army is very important. So, yeah, if they're going to want to surveil anyone, it would be folks here in Hardin County. And, y'all, we really need to think about this, y'all, as we move forward. And it is real close to time for our primary elections. And as Randy is saying right now, Randy Whelan, thank you. Time to vote them out. Y'all, we've got candidates who have passion, erudition, and they have the mental capacity to stand up against authoritarianism. So, we know that William Dakota Compton, has been on this show before. Actually, I started with him on every Sunday. He used to be on here with me. Hadn't been on here in a while. But May 19th, as Becky is saying, that is primary time, y'all. May 19th, that is primary time. We got to get out and vote in these primary time. We got to get out and vote for a candidate who can win, who has the capacity to win. And once they win, they have the fortitude to stand up to the guardians of the pedophiles, to stand up to this Epstein class. We can't have a namby-pamby, just run-of-the-mill establishment Democrat take this position. So I am endorsing William Dakota Compton for U.S. Congress. We've got to get Guthrie out of there. We've got to stand up for working class Kentuckians, working class citizens in the whole of the United States. If you elect William Compton, you will be electing someone who has a passion for Kentucky and for his district, who will be here for us. So I don't know what more I can say about that, but we've got to get out and vote May 19th. Hopefully you're registered and can vote in your party in a party primary. If you're an independent, yeah, you just said you didn't really care enough about democracy to make a choice and to do something about it. All right. Randy says, don't boo, vote. He's quoting, I guess, Barack Obama. Yeah, it's absolutely it. We cannot give up our responsibility. We can't abdicate our responsibility to anyone else. We have to take responsibility ourselves. And I'm asking you, y'all, I'm not being primaried. Of course, I'm asking you to vote for me in November. But in the meantime, in these primaries, for people that are being primaried, again, I'm for Compton. And I am completely in line with him. He is another public school teacher down there in Warren County. He's already in public office down there in his town. And so he knows how to write a bill. He knows how to work with folks to get things done, to get legislation done. So we can capitalize on that when we send him to Washington. We're not going to have someone with a complete lack of experience in public office if we elect him to represent us in the House of Representatives. Now, we know Guthrie is not representing us. He's not a person that is out there swinging a hammer, holding a rifle on watch. He's not someone who's ever entered a classroom of public school kids and had to learn how to work with all kinds of personalities in order to impart knowledge and excellence. But William Compton has. Now, here in Hardin County, we've got Vincent Thompson. I've had him on this show 3 times, and he's talked about what he believes is necessary for this great union of ours, this great United States, to move forward and to keep on working and pushing for farmers, labor, all the folks who get the job done, build Kentucky and build the United States. So he is running for Senate. I've also had on here Logan Forsyth. He's a man of vision. He's a man of experience. So, we got Vincent Thompson, who I am pushing for because he is a local Hardin Countyan. He is a cattleman. And he really has a passion for the needs of this country. He knows that we need affordable health care, and he has a plan for how we will get it. He has a story about how he lost his wife during the COVID epidemic to, well, go ahead and look up some of his stories online. I'm sure you can find it there. He'll tell you what he believes in. Again, you can go back, look at my former videos, see what Vincent Thompson and Logan Forsyth said while they were here. They're both men of vision, men of intelligence, men of deep thought, and men who care for everyone in Kentucky, no matter who you are. He knows that Kentucky citizens are some of the hardest working and some of the hardest loving people there are, you know? And that's why, even after all my time away in the military and in my time away in federal service, I came back to Kentucky. Because, y'all, there's nothing like our old Kentucky home. But our new Kentucky home is something else. And we got to keep it that way. And we'll do that with labor, with veterans coming home and reclaiming their lives after giving so much for this country. So, y'all, remember, everyone deployed overseas, have a great weekend. I hope you enjoyed May Day, most importantly. I'm glad that Randy and Becky reminded me that's what today is. And I hope you had, maybe your Philly won the Oaks. And since my wife is a breast cancer survivor, the Oaks has a special place in my heart too, because since that's what they celebrate. As I sign off here, Randy says, note that the UAW will not endorse the primary races until after the primary is over, just so we are clear. Well, yeah, it says they won't endorse anyone until the primary is over. Okay, yep, I note that, Randy. But like I said, personally, I am endorsing myself. It's not a labor union, just myself. I'm endorsing William Dakota Compton, who I have worked with, made shows with, and I know what he stands for. I know his background. I know he is a true Kentuckian. And that's really what matters. Y'all, bless your corazon, which is Spanish for heart. God, have a beautiful weekend. Hopefully you're enjoying it like I am. And hopefully your dogs are enjoying the weather as much as my dogs have been. And hopefully you can get out, share this wonderful weather with them.
Soundstripe. 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 Soundstripe.